Hey guys, welcome to the Transform Your Confidence show, aimed at arming you with insights from experts in mindset and clarity, media and communications, branding and marketing, and leadership and advocacy. I'm your host as usual, Raj Girn, the founder of the OpenChessConfidenceAcademy.com. I bring you deep dive conversations as a two-part series each week, which drop every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. PST and 12 p.m. EST. The goal of the show, for those of you who are catching it for the first time, is to help you move your life and career forward and upward with unflinching confidence, knowing that you have the knowledge and action steps that you need to get you well on your way towards your intended purpose. This week's theme is a new series that I started called A CEO's Journey, where I catch innovative company leaders in conversation, where I look to seek knowledge on how they think, make decisions, and project their companies forward in warp speed. This week's two-part series is entitled Why the CEO is the Most Creative Member of Hyper-Successful Companies. My guest today is a longtime friend and colleague, RANJ BATH, who is the CEO of Nurosene, an innovative app solution to build better brain health, which IPOed just recently after barely a year since inception. Welcome to the show, RANJ. I finally get you on to talk about fabulous you. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you for having me. It's been a minute for sure. So really good to see you again.
You too, sweetheart. Listen, before I get into the first question, I want to kind of preface it a little bit. There are so many aspects to consider today that weren't the case historically speaking, like automation that is needed to scale and workforce diversification that is needed to stay competitive. These are the very core that demand a creative perspective in order to fit all of the moving parts into their respective places of the jigsaw puzzle. And, if a company is to succeed in its mission to grow, these things really have to be thought about. And with so many moving parts today because of technology and how quickly innovation is happening, the most valuable creative person in a company, I truly believe, is the CEO. My personal definition of creativity as it relates to business is being able to incorporate all aspects of the business towards one single end, the company's vision. And we do this through its mission and its values so that the company can own its market share and even expand it. Some of the better known creative CEOs that we all know about are people like Steve Jobs from Apple, Satya Nadella from Microsoft, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, Whitney Wolfe Herd from Bumble, and even Elon Musk, Tesla. We all know these names, and the reason we know them is that they've done very innovative things within their roles as CEOs. So RANJ, I want to start our conversation after that massive preface by asking you first and foremost, why, in your opinion, through what you've seen happen over the past 10 years, specifically in business, and through your own professional experiences, do CEOs today need to be more creative than they were in the past in order for their company to be set up for success? What have you seen in the past decade?
It's actually a very great question. I would say that CEOs traditionally were just going down one path. Often it was like, build this large corporation, here's one product, go out there, take it to market, scale it, and it was pretty much that same pathway. Nowadays, if you think about the markets that these companies are dealing with, they're so fast moving, they're changing, they're evolving, the attention span of the consumer is adapting. So you have to find creative ways to engage with the audience, and I think that's the main thing. Technology has changed the landscape in terms of how we're consuming this like vast amounts and arrays of information. Like, how are you gonna grab that attention span? You have to do something that is creatively engaging that consumer so that they would come back and associate with your brand. And you mentioned a couple of CEOs there have been incredible. We associate with a lot of those as being highly creative, and they've taken their companies from from certain places to really scale these companies, and it's been great to see that creativity coming through in the campaigns that they've been driving.
Absolutely, Ranjan. Are there any kind of examples that you can share from the real world that you feel really kind of exemplifies creative CEOs that have kind of grown their companies because of some of these innovations? Anything kind of that sticks out to you? I know there's a ton of examples, but is there one that kind of comes to you that you want to talk about? Perhaps what happened with your last company with Apple and with Beats. I mean, that was very, very innovative what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, so Jimmy Iovine, who was the founder of Beats with Dr. Dre, he was also the founder and president and CEO of Interscope Records under Universal. That's actually a great example. So, and there's a whole HBO documentary on this guy and how he kind of like built this thing to what it is. Actually, he became kind of like a mentor to the company Desi Hits, which I started way back in the day.
Yes.
Invested into it, and then I eventually went on to help drive corporate strategy at Beats and saw them through that acquisition. But Jimmy's a super inspiring person. If you think about what he did way back in the day, he launched Interscope Records. He built it up. He sold it off to Warner Music over time. I think it was like $30 million at the time. And over time, then the old Jewish guys at Warner Music were like, oh, we don't get this gangster rap thing. So Jimmy bought it back for the same that he sold it for, then built it up again, and then sold it for like $300 million to Universal. But in the process, every single time that someone said, like gangster rap won't work, he built it up. It was like he was the guy that founded Eminem when people said the white rapper wasn't going to work, and he was like, we can do something here. And he built it up and he grew it. In the same way, when we built up Desi Hits, and I actually didn't think this was going to be about Desi Hits, but when I first went to India and I heard Priyanka Chopra could sing when I heard her in the studio, I'm like, well, I took that to Jimmy and was like, let's do it. I'm not sure the market's ready, but there's a billion people that already know her, but no one knows her over here. How do we work on making her palatable for Middle America? And we had to do that creatively, right? By doing collaborations with people like will.i.am and Pitbull. And we did the same with Slumdog Millionaire, where we took the Pussycat Dolls and we put them together. You know this story. Where we put them together with A.R. Rahman. And again, you got to think about creative ways that's going to grow your audience. So.
Absolutely. And these are just some of the examples, guys, of what I've seen, RANJ do during his time. And let's talk a little bit further and dive a little bit deeper on some of this stuff, RANJ. Having known you for over a decade now, I've seen your professional journey go from the finance industry to the music industry, which you just finished talking about, and now into the mental health space, with a common denominator being that all of these companies, although they're different industries, they all have technology as their core underlying base. So for anyone out there who isn't yet bought into the fact that all businesses have to have some technology play in order to amplify their opportunity for success, can you explain why in the case of this, that we really have to focus on implementing technology as a part of our play if we want to really scale a business today, considering where we're kind of headed in the future? Because there's still, the old boys that don't feel that they need to do that. And, a lot of legacy brands that are still kind of really archaic in the way that they're looking at their businesses. So I want your thoughts on that.
I think it's obvious, it's critical, right? So you think about, my career, you mentioned the different verticals that I've gone through. My background, the way I kind of like describe myself is, I'm a marketeer, I'm a brand strategist. I've helped, various brands, in different verticals. But what's been critical through all of that process is to understand your customer, understand that market. And we have a tool here, i.e. technology, that's going to allow us to understand the customer better than we ever had. So understand the personas, what these people are doing, where they're located, what are all the different things that they're consuming in terms of content, and then engaging them in a way that talks to them and resonates with them through the variety of technological platforms, i.e. the different social media platforms, the blogs that they're reading, the devices that they're using to engage around that content. So there's no better time to use technology, and it's so critical that you take that into account to know your customer better than you ever did before.
Absolutely. And it seems like a daunting proposition considering we have so many opportunities today. But on the flip side, it gives us a lot more diversity in innovating. And also it gives opportunities to people who are, maybe not so well heeled from a financial perspective to kind of incorporate some of these tools, which are a lot less costly than,
Hmm.
building like major teams of experts. Because a lot of
Hmm.
automation is also implemented for that purpose as well, right? So I want to ask you this, Ranj, before we kind of move in deeper. What do you feel startup CEOs need to know to ensure that they have in place what is needed to set their company up for growth?
I think just coming back to having all the information to understand the customer is one, right? We already talked about that.
Yeah.
But just to have the vision of, have the foresight and the vision of where are you going to take that company. So I'm sure we'll talk about Nurosene of what we're building today, but I already have that 2 to 3 year and beyond growth plan. And I have, as a CEO, I always have that in my sights. So while we're building, tactical plans around the execution right now and staffing up and building out like the marketing plans to grow in the short term, I, as a CEO, always have to know where we're going to and building and implementing the things in place that are going to lay the foundations for that future, right? So to build the foundations in terms of demonstrating value and demonstrating how this thing is going to scale through, it could be a company that grows their user base, but I'm a big believer in demonstrating revenue early on to show that your customer values what you're building. So to start putting those pieces in place, build the foundations, because also it helps to shape your product as well to show that where this thing can really go. And I'm not saying a company shouldn't adapt, but to definitely have a vision and a goal to know where you're going is definitely the foresight that CEO needs to have.
Absolutely. And it's that whole kind of proof of concept, right, Ranj? I mean, without that, what are you building, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who are you convincing that, what you have is a gold mine opportunity? And it's interesting that you share what you did, because, a lot of successful CEOs that I have conversations with always say the same thing to me, that until they have figured out proof of concept that, this works, and there's a gap in the marketplace, and that gap I'm able to fill with this. People want this, and there is an opportunity to scale this because of XYZ. They don't move forward. So it's really interesting how you're basically saying the same thing, that
Yeah.
you need to know as soon as possible if this is something that can be monetized before you move forward. And I love that. I think that's something
Yeah.
that a lot of people who are thinking about going into business on any level need to really sit with that idea, because we tend to, as creative people, when we have this idea, we start to kind of create out products and create product and product and product. We don't really test the market. We don't look at the relationship between marketing and data. And what does that actually mean, right? So I thank you so much for sharing that, because I really do feel that that is really probably the most important thing that you need to do before you even think about where the company's headed. So let's talk a little bit about that as it relates to you in your current role as the CEO of a very, very interesting company, Nurosene, which states as its mission statement, I kind of want to start there, and I quote, "Nurosene is committed to finding solutions that will advance science, improve patient outcomes, and empower people suffering from poor mental health around the globe." That is a huge, tall order. Break it down for me, sweetheart. Break it down.
It's a big statement. So can I give you a little bit of my story of like how I ended up here? That might be one of your questions, but let me explain it.
Absolutely.
So you were framing a bit of my career, right? I've worked in large corporates and in various roles. This is my first CEO role, by the way. Beginning of last year, this is actually before pandemic. I was like, you know what? I actually want to take a break. And I actually, I've taken vacations all over the world, but always like small trips. And I've seen a lot of my friends take like year sabbaticals, and I thought, I want to take a sabbatical. So I actually had a 5-month trip planned to go around South America. I was going to do like Mexico. I started off at some like Burning Man type music festival in Oaxaca in Mexico, and then from there I was going to go to Guayaquil in Ecuador, Machu Picchu, Lima, Santiago, Buenos Aires, all the way back to Brazil. Everything was booked. Actually lost a lot of money, but that was another story because of pandemic. But in March, then pandemic hit. And like I couldn't get to Ecuador because that's one of the first places closest borders. So then what I thought, you know what, I'm going to float around Mexico for a little bit, and had some people that were going down to Puerto Escondido, floated around that. There's a longer story. Went to San Miguel de Allende, and then thought, pandemic's getting worse. I should just get back home before borders close, and who knows what's going to happen. So I came back, and what I said was, and I don't know if it's the secret when you're putting this out there, that I want to spend my time, invest my time and my next move into something that I feel really good about and that's impactful. This is a true story. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take the year off anyway and just chill and take my time. And I probably mentioned that same thing to a number of different people. And then what happened was last year, for my sins, I went to Tulum 4 times and just like hanging around and just taking time out for myself. When I was on a beach in Tulum, I had a call from someone who's one of the investors in this company, and they said, we're doing a CEO search for this company. So I'm not the founder. And they said, look, we're looking for someone with your pedigree, and would you interview? So I met the founder, met the other investors. And the more I looked into it, I'm like, these guys are building something incredible. And I was already having that vision, the creative juices were flowing. I'm like, everything I'm saying, why am I just taking a year off? This is what I was looking for. So I ended up just coming back, and I joined as CEO last year, and it's just been a roller coaster ride since.
Wow.
So that's the story.
Oh my God, I love everything about that story. So, everything's on purpose, sweetheart, whether we plan it or not, like somehow we end up where we need to end up, right?
Well, there's this saying that I've been coining recently by the Persian philosopher Rumi: "What you seek is seeking you." And I actually really believe in that. And this family, and I wake up every day, and I just told you earlier, just before the interview, like I've been sitting at this desk since 5 a.m, and I do this so passionately because I'm doing something that I love. And I feel like I'm doing something while we're building this amazing company, and we've already taken a company public to the market. But I feel really like passionate about what I'm doing, and that's I think it's so important. And I think coming out of pandemic, that's so important for everyone as well. Like if you didn't come out with some kind of change or reevaluating what you're doing, then what was that year for you?
Absolutely, I completely and utterly agree, because I'm a firm believer that polar opposites is always a purpose for it. When there's something extremely dire and negative, there is something extremely positive and uplifting on the other side. You just got to kind of hone into that energy. And that's kind of what you did here, Ranj. And I want to dive in now with Nurosene. Tell everyone, what is this company? Like, what does it offer?
Okay, so there's many pieces of it. So I'll be careful not to kind of unfold too much, because sometimes it'd be like, whoa. But like I said, I have this grand vision for the company, right? So my founder, his name is Daniel Galucci, a very incredible individual. If you ever meet this guy, then you automatically like, we have to build a company around this guy. He's like a 20-year veteran, functional neurologist out of Toronto, but actually through pandemic has been living in Nova Scotia in Halifax, which is why I'm like here early, because it's 4 hours ahead. And I learned that the hard way, that you guys in Canada have another time zone. I'm an ignorant English person that only found it out the hard way. So sometimes my day starts really early, and then the rest of my team's in Toronto, so hence they're 3 hours ahead. But basically, he's worked with celebrities, athletes, NHL players, NFL teams, and what we've actually done is we've digitized the experience of you going and seeing a functional neurologist. And what we want to do is almost like democratize healthcare, so that this isn't just for the select few that have the means in private clinics. So this is why one thing you'll always see is the app that we've just launched into market just now, which is taking these like brain health, brain coaching exercises, is always going to be free, right? And you'll see why we've got some certain people involved in the company as well. And basically, it's on the basic level, it's exercises that train your brain, and we're trying to educate. We feel like we have a social responsibility to educate. We all know that the brain controls many different things, but to stretch this thing on a daily basis into what we call radically fundamental things that we should be doing on a daily basis is so important. And everyone understands the importance of like stretching before you exercise, and people coming out of pandemic, even more so I think about physical fitness and nutrition. We're trying to educate on mental wellness. So there's exercises and activities that we put inside the app. We've also launched a line of nutraceutical supplements, which have been designed by my founder, who studied at the Institute of Functional Medicine. So these have been designed right down to a cellular level, how they're affecting your brain. The stuff's incredible. I won't talk too much about that. But where this thing's going is where the most excitement about the market is. As you're doing these activities, we're building in, we're doing all this right now, we're building in technologies like all these wearable devices that track your heart rate variability, resting heart rate, sleep tracking cycles. We're building in facial capture technology inside the app. So while you're doing these activities, like looking at like some like dot moving around on screen, we're detecting your eye movements, which can be an early detector of things like anxiety. We've got, the facial capture can also detect like 120 different areas of inflammation of your face. We're using the gyroscope of the phone for balance. So all the things that someone like Dan, the neurologist in clinic, would recognize those things, and also from the filling out surveys and things like, I can detect that you're predisposed to certain conditions. You should change your program in a preventative solution. What we've done is we've digitized that, and we can start predicting through AI whether you might be predisposed to anxiety, depression, things like that, leading into more serious healthcare conditions as well, which we're working with the FDA on to see if we can get these things cleared for digital therapy. So that's kind of what we're building.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That just is so much. I mean, I can't even imagine the technology that's involved with all this.
Well, there's more. I mean, technology is incredible. What we're also doing, and this is the stuff that blows your mind, we're building in, so the AI will detect certain conditions and put you on a pathway to alleviate them. So over time, your personalized program through the app will be very different from mine based on what factors you might be facing. But what we're also doing is we are collecting data sets around subpopulations that could be suffering certain diseases or have gone through, suffered with COVID. We can start detecting differences in those subpopulations that allow us to start identifying development opportunities for pharma drugs, which is where we're going with this. And I'm already on a pathway of a few of these that we're going to start talking about soon as well. So there's all sorts of opportunities. So when I was talking about earlier about the bigger vision of where this thing goes, we're going to start owning IP around specific pharma drugs, and actually take companies or take these drug molecules through phase 1 clinical trials and then throw them over the wall to like Pfizer, Roche, who pump in $20-30 million per drug, which we don't have. But I'm owning IP, so there's a revenue opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So I need to ask you this question, Ranj. Who is this for? Like, who is the ideal customer for something like this?
Yeah, so it's for everyone, and that's what I'm saying. You don't have to be suffering with a mental health condition. It's like, we're just trying to educate on the importance of taking care of your brain anyway, right? So yes, if you're suffering with something, we'll detect it, help you through it, but all of us should be doing these things, right? So my founder has his kids doing it every morning. You'll find that we're going to make you do these morning routines, and it's a combination not just of these brain exercises, but there's 4 different, what we call 4 fundamentals: movement, brain, nutrition, recovery, that all come together and help with all the different areas of your brain and the extended system. So your cerebral cortex, your spinal, your spine, your peripheral nervous system, and things like that as well. So yeah, so all of us should be doing it. And by the way, so we're walking the talk as well. So you see in Korea and Japan, they get all the factory workers do all these exercises. At the beginning of our meetings, we're all doing the exercises to get us focused, get us set up to have clarity for the meetings as well.
Oh my God, I love it. Where can we get this?
It's available. Everyone can avail. It's on the App Store. So, and we're going to start running. So here's the other side of why I got involved in this: to stay true to not just building another company and earning loads of dollars and stuff. We have a social responsibility. So I've actually just formed a mental health advisory council with some incredible people on it, which we'll be making public soon. And we've come together to really keep ourselves accountable of what is Nurosene doing with its collective resources and the voices of the people that we have. And what I want to do with that is, it's not a Nurosene push, it's more of what organizations can we get involved? Where do we take this? How do we take this to minority communities that don't have access to this as well, to functional medicine centers and things like that? So we really feel the social cause behind making sure everyone has this. And this is why it comes back to empowering people to find the solutions for mental health care.
Right. So for people who are just joining us, Ranj, where do they go to get this app? Is it available everywhere that, apps are available? And what part of it is available for free versus what is behind a paywall? So we can kind of just really understand what this is.
Okay, so it's available in the Apple Store and in the Android Store as well, in the Google Play Store.
Okay.
The app, true to what I said earlier, the app is always going to be free. There's no paywall. we have so much premium content that's coming in there. And one thing that's validated for me, like I said, I've been in marketing for many, many years. The engagement that we have on our social media around the content that we're pushing, because it's educational, I've never seen it before. This is incredible. So we're bringing that content in long form formats inside the app to really educate as well. That premium content is always going to be available for free. What we're building, what we're testing, and this is where I was saying earlier about testing early about different lanes of where do we take this from the app is always free, but we're going to be testing SaaS-based models, software as a service type models that could be taken into corporate wellness type programs where people need to see more holistic views of their people. We're already working on pilots with youth academies where they need to, coaches need to see all their people together, put them through different kinds of drills that might require different kinds of training. We're looking at elite sports as well. There's all sorts of applications where we take that. So, that's, like I said, there's revenue around the IP, there's revenue around the supplements, there's going to be revenue around the SaaS-based kind of models as well.
Wow.